Today I want to talk about this series of tutorials and specifically this first part that really taught me a lot about functionality in concept art. We tend to think, and especially when we are early on in our artistic development, that concept art, concept design, environment concept art all revolves around beautiful pictures, beautiful landscape paintings and warriors with sticks going through unknown lands and all of that. And those have their place, but this tutorial and a lot of other tutorials that I've seen on these topics of environment concept art really opened my eyes that you are creating an environment, especially for video games, you're creating an environment where the player will need to go around, interact. Composition in a kind of free camera world is very hard to tackle. So understanding level design, player affordances, and all of that in this context will go a long way into making you a better concept artist. I'll talk about affordances in other videos. I'll add a link here in the description for a talk at GDC that is really great on that topic and storytelling in environment concept art. But here today, I think the big thing that I want to bring and discuss, and you will definitely learn way more from his tutorial, is that when you're thinking of a place to be walked, it's better to think of that from a top view. I've discussed that in other videos here in the channel, but definitely thinking and planning where you be, where you can go, what kind of challenges and puzzles you need to solve along the way, ladders, climbing, and all of that. Will be really helpful to populate the scene that you're building. So this kind of scene that we're seeing here right now is one of the angles of a top view that was decided by James in this case, but could be decided by a level designer if you are in a production environment. So it's really important to think that sometimes you will be given like a gray box, a very simple geometry, 3D geometry, and you have to paint over that to really figure out what that's going to look like. In the case of the tutorial, James really creates his own thing and goes from there. And I think that's where, to be really honest, there is a step where the tutorial can be a little too complex. James' control of values, as you can see, here, the division of planes and contrast, the lighter values in the background, darker values in the foreground, giving the sense of atmospheric perspective as well as depth throughout the image. It's really hard to control if you are beginning to paint. If you look at my ArtStation and some of the studies I did in the past, I really struggle with that. I'm most of a drawer in a line sense and not as much as in a value sense, so I had a rough time in this. So I want to be pretty honest, and it can be a little tough, but definitely worth learning from him about values. I think it's one of the best artists and teachers out there talking about value for environment concept art. So if you look at other tutorials from this series, you definitely see that there is a lot of value control as well as composition, shapes, creating a lot of interest, architecture, design, and all of that, creating a lot of interest in the overall scene. As I said before, sometimes you won't be able to create it yourself. It will come from the story. It will come from the level designer. So an image like this from the Uncharted series, I don't know if it's a production image, but I found that on the internet. But that can be a playing ground to understand if this level is going to be fun for the player. Gameplay is king is one of the biggest sayings in the video game industry, as much as story is king in live action, in animation, in film. So you really need to understand that your art is supposed to reinforce gameplay. So that's why understanding how the level will look and how it will feel, and what kind of places you will have possibilities of climbing sometimes, and how you can reinforce that visually. I'll bring other examples down the line of artists such as Aaron Lemonic, that was one of the lead concept artists for Naughty Dog for a long time. Understanding that sometimes in an environment that is very populated with greeneries and vegetation, having more red colors in the enemies will help them pop and really help the gameplay and overall feel of that environment. So how to bring something like this to a level of finish that we saw before, that's one of the biggest challenges that you have to really convey beauty inside the constraints of functionality. So another view here, another beautiful vista with a lot of possibilities for beautiful landscape painting, but also having all the interactive possibilities. You need to climb here, or you throw a rope in here and jump to that other place. You need somewhere here where you can go down or climb this way. And a lot of questions to be asked and a lot of visual answers to be had. So I think this is the big message I want to convey here today. Think about functionality. When you're doing a scene, when you're doing even your beautiful environment scene, how would a player interact with that? What's the function of that beauty? I'll definitely cover architecture in some architecture tutorials down the line. So what makes that place different? If it's a temple, how is the interaction? How are the corridors laid out so that people can interact with what's being done there and the rituals that are happening there? If it's natural landscape, how can you reinforce that to be beautiful but functional at the same time? So a lot of questions coming up. To help answer some of those questions, I highly suggest those two books. One of them, In the Global History of Architecture. It really talks a lot, and Francis Ching brings a lot of top views. So you see temples from a top view perspective, and you really understand how people interact with that, and things get even in the elevation, the side elevation, you can see that the temples would get narrower and more intimate in terms of overall how high the ceiling is and all of that. So it's really interesting to see what's out there in our world, as well as in landscape design. Landscape design combines the understanding of functionality from overall architecture with nature. So that will go a long way, also helping us think of how natural environments can be reinforced and designed in a sense that feels believable, but enhances the beauty of that place. So the combination of the two will probably help elevate your functionality sense. In terms of overall tutorials and all, James has also other great tutorials in his Gumroad. The link's going to be in the description. Tutorials on drawing, tutorials on composition, on guiding the eye to where it needs to go. There are great talks at GDC. I'll also have a link to their YouTube channel here. And I also discussed a lot of drawing tutorials in my video on drawing for concept art, using a lot of foundation group tutorials. So if you enjoyed this one, you probably will learn a lot from that as well. So I really hope this is helpful. I hope you have a great day and come back for other videos down the line. So see you all soon.